This American Life is supported by SimpliSafe Home Security Systems, featuring around-the-clock protection with no annual contracts. Learn more about a special offer for This American Life listeners at simplisafe.com/TAL. And by Braintree. For managers and developers of mobile apps, Braintree's new software development kit makes it easy to support multiple mobile payment types with one simple integration. To learn more and to try out their sandbox, go to braintreepayments.com/podcast.
If you're listening to our program on the podcast or on the internet, I just want to give you a heads up. There's cursing in here that we have not beeped. If you prefer a beeped version of our program, you can hear that at our website, thisamericanlife.org. In New York, like in lots of cities, you can call 311 for help with city services, but also for all kinds of other stuff. The most common calls they get are about landlords not heating apartments properly, but they'll also, help you get a hold of a W-2 form you need from 2009, tell you what streets will be blocked off for a presidential visit, connect you with the gas company, and a stunning array of other things. 50,000 calls a day.
Actually, I had a call today.
This is 311 operator Victoria Dursini.
The woman said that her fiance died in their bed and that she was pregnant. And she wanted to identify his DNA in order to get Social Security benefits. So she wanted to know who to contact.
She got a referral to Family Court, which can establish paternity, to the Social Security office to find out how to get the benefits, and a legal referral to the New York City Bar Association. Here's 311 operator Angelique Pantoja.
A woman was cleaning her garage, and she moved a box, and there was a crocodile. And so I had to ask her, like a crocodile from big with the. She's like, yeah, it's going snap at me. And
she says that was an easy one, of course, called Animal Care and Control. But she also helped with this call.
I had a woman who I guess she had an unruly teenager, and even on the phone they were arguing, and she couldn't take it. She couldn't take the disrespect, and she wanted help.
That woman was given a referral for counseling services. The way this works is that the operators sit at computers with a massive database of answers, thousands of different topics. They can help you locate where your car was towed. They can explain the changes in the property tax. They can help you find something you left in a New York City taxi. By the way, they can do even without the CAD number now. The taxis have GPS. But lots of people call for things that are not in the database. You see a UFO? 311 has no answers for you. Not in the database. You drop your keys in the sewer grate at the corner. New York City is not going to help you with that one either. And people call with all kinds of stuff. I know a guy. He and his wife were in a taxi cab riding home late at night from a Halloween party. He was dressed as a Teletubby. She was a sexy creature from the deep sea. Fishnet stocking, short skirt, big seaweed. They got to their apartments late at night. His wife told him, get out. She would continue in the cab. She wanted to spend the night elsewhere. So he got out of the cab. And not sure exactly what to do, he dialed 311. Operator picks up. He says, I don't know where my wife is. The operator asked, is she missing? He could be connected to the police. No, the guy says. And at that point he realizes, right, she's been staying out a lot. Right, she's having an affair. He didn't know exactly what it was that he wanted to get from 311. It's just he found himself suddenly not sure what had happened to him or how he got there. He had never been in this situation. It wasn't clear what to do.
We get those types of calls because we are known for a place that gives answers. So I guess, why not try 311?
311 operator Natasha Townsend.
I've had a caller. She called to speak about her boyfriend. She felt like her boyfriend was going to leave her because he was a model, and she just felt like he had a lot of attention from other women. So I would try to offer her different services, maybe some counseling for their relationship. And she didn't want it. She just wanted to speak to a 311 rep. She's like, no, I don't want to speak to anyone else. I just want to speak to 311. And there's nothing in our database that we use to say, okay, well, if he's doing this, this is what you should do.
Natasha found herself off the grid, so she improvised. She's not allowed to give personal advice, but she told the woman. So she basically said the only thing she could say in this situation that they did not train her for. I understand. She said, I understand over and over. The woman kept her on the phone for 45 minutes, and it seemed to help.
I think she felt better after she got off the phone. She said thank you. She said thank you for listening to me. That's really what it was. She really just wanted to talk.
Well, from WBEZ Chicago's This American Life, I'm Eric Glass. Today on our program, what happens when you find yourself off the map, far from all the normal things you're used to and that you do, and things are way, way more extreme than they were for this 311 operator. You are lost in some situation you've never been in, and you've never heard of anybody else in it either, and you have to improvise, which either brings out a resourceful, heroic side of people, or just the opposite. Stay with us. Step 1, marriage of inconvenience. This first story is about a couple who are in a relationship that is unlike the homes that either of them grew up in, unlike actually anything in either of their experiences. They're married, and it's a prison marriage. It's the guy who's a prisoner, and who was a prisoner when they met. Christopher Rhodes tells the story.
Prison marriages aren't so unusual. They happen. Michael Jewell was serving out a life sentence for murder in Texas. Joan Cavici was a widow living in Dallas who volunteered with the ACLU. They never thought that Michael would get out, and they were okay with that. But sometimes they'd talk about what it would be like if he were released, to spend time together at her summer cabin in New Hampshire, go fishing together, be married for real. And 5 years into their relationship, when Michael decided to appeal his case, in the very unlikely event that he'd win, Joan wanted to be prepared. So she drew up a contract.
We made kind of a pact that and I still have that document, that we would try it for 2 years. Whatever he got out, we would try it for 2 years. And if we weren't happy after 2 years, that we would separate.
Joan keeps the contract in her desk at home.
We, the undersigned, agree to the following arrangements.
The contract explicitly lays out all the very practical things that usually go unspoken in a relationship. Joan agrees that she'll provide Michael with a place to live and money for food and clothes. Michael agrees to take care of Joan, to be her companion. The contract is like a couple's fantasy of the most ordinary details of everyday life together. It gets amazingly specific. Here are some of Michael's duties.
House chores, 50% participation in cooking, cleaning, trash takeout, bed making, and minor household repairs. Outside chores, yard and garden maintenance, dog walking, shopping, driving, and car and air travel assistance. Here follow some specific obligations for Joan. House chores, 50% participation in cooking, cleaning, bed making, and laundry. Providing.
Without prison, it's unlikely that Michael and Joan would have ever met in the first place. She's 16 years older than he is, from a completely different world. Michael never knew much more than crime. When he was about 7, his father had him steal a pair of shoes. Things went downhill from there. Michael robbed grocery stores, cracked safes, he was in and out of prison. Then in 1970, he killed a man during a robbery.
We spooked him, we scared the hell out of him. And the wind was howling, and I was standing in front of him trying to tell him this is a robbery, cooperate, and you won't get hurt. And he said, oh, and made a motion like Matt Dillon going for the draw. And my partner thought he was going for a pistol and shot him in the back. And when I heard the shot, just reflexively, I shot him in the chest. And when he hit the ground, I knelt down and searched him, and he didn't even have a weapon. What he was trying to do was give us the bank sack.
Michael was caught and convicted, which in Texas means he wound up on death row. He was 23. Joan's life in her early 20s was about as far from rural Texas as you can get in this country. She lived in Cambridge, Massachusetts, was married to a PhD student in English literature at Harvard named Pascal Cavici Jr. Pascal's father was the editor and lifelong friend of John Steinbeck, which meant that sometimes Joan got to go to intimate parties in New York City full of literary heavyweights.
Saul was often there, Saul Bellow, and Arthur
Miller.
Arthur Miller. When Arthur married Marilyn, of course, then everybody wanted to go to the dinner party.
Marilyn, of course, was Marilyn Monroe.
She was quiet, didn't talk a whole lot, but she was so gorgeous. You know, we all just sat there and looked at her and were happy that she was there. The men did most of the talking. And I was also the quiet at those parties, too. I didn't feel as comfortable. They were often talking about things that were not familiar to me, about their work and politics. So I had the baby by then, and that was taking up most of my attention.
Joan's marriage to Pascal was pretty standard for the time. He was the breadwinner, she was the homemaker. Joan raised 2 kids, eventually became a school teacher. And then, many years later, when Joan was 66, Pascal died of cancer. After his death, she got more involved with volunteer work she'd been doing at the local ACLU chapter. She answered prison mail and started corresponding with several inmates to find out about conditions in the Texas prison system, which is how she first met Michael. He was 52, nearly 30 years into his prison sentence, and he sent a letter that found its way to Joan.
Says, "Dear friends, I am a prisoner on the East Hand unit of the Texas prison system. I came to prison with the death penalty in 1970. I stayed on death."
There was nothing special about Michael's letter. He was asking about getting involved with anti-death penalty work. His own death sentence had been commuted to life in 1973, and he'd become something of an activist in prison, heavily involved in prison reform issues. Joan read his letter and dutifully wrote back. Then Michael wrote back. Then Joan wrote, and so on. Michael and Joan wrote to each other almost every single day for 10 years. Michael was self-taught, but his letters showed how much he'd read, including most of John Steinbeck. And his intellect impressed Joan. She was constantly communicating with prisoners, 5 to 10 at a time. But Michael's letters stood out. He was a good writer. Take this letter he wrote to Joan after he intentionally injured himself, cut his own Achilles tendon, to protest work duty conditions.
"I had grown to love my body without narcissism, almost as a friend, a faithful companion. It was, after all, my only refuge from the filth and the stench and the scorn. As I sat there, contemplating the harsh task at hand, I felt like a traitor, as though I were committing the highest treason. It was most difficult to see a higher."
He looked, to me, he looked like James Cagney. It just was a perfect James Cagney, except that he didn't have very good teeth. He had just a few teeth on the bottom. So I saw him, and he was James Cagney, and I used to love James Cagney in his movies. But again, it was not, it wasn't love at first sight or anything like that, because I'm not that sort of person. I go for the mind first. And he had a wonderful mind, and we just had lots to talk about.
It wasn't all intellectual. In his letters, Michael started using pet names for Joan. He'd call her Sweet Baby Joan, and other things too.
"Dear noble little squaw, sweet baby. Dearest finger-licking, good sweet baby. Dear honey butt."
In her letters, Joan loosened up as well.
I think I'll fix a big scotch and go sit in the backyard and smoke a cigarette and try to get you into perspective. God, I wish you were here to spank. Can I stop there?
Every Sunday afternoon, Joan would drive the few hours to visit Michael in prison, a book on tape playing on the car stereo. She'd stay at the same fancy bed and breakfast near the prison, became friends with the people who ran the place. And then the rest of the week, she got to go back to her own life and did what she wanted to do. It was romance, but on her terms, something she'd never experienced. Michael and Joan would hug and kiss discreetly on their contact visits. This was all in a public visiting room. There was nothing conjugal about what was going on. The limits of their time together were clear, and Joan was happy with the arrangement.
I kind of liked being alone. It's very comfortable for a woman to know that somebody loves her and that she has all this freedom to live her own life.
Michael and Joan knew that no matter how close they became, they'd never really be together. Rarely, if ever, does a former death row inmate get paroled in Texas. So, really, what they had was their letters. Here's another one from Joan.
A song that has always torn my heart is the September song. You remember, and these few precious days I'll spend with you.
And these few precious.
And especially in our case, the days are few and we may never spend them really together. We must get used to this reality and not ruin what years remain. I love you, precious Michael. SBJ. Sweet baby Joan.
Oh, it's a long while from May to December.
In 2005, they got married, but that was mainly so that they wouldn't lose their visitation rights. The prison had denied them visits before. And they lived this way, happily, for 5 years. Then, in June 2010, Michael was summoned by prison authorities. He walked into a room, and an official came to speak to him.
He said, are you Jewel? I said, yeah. He said, here, I got a present for you. And he handed me a sheet of paper, and I started reading it, and I had made parole.
Michael was confused. Just a month or so before, he'd gone before the parole board and been denied, just as he had been many times before.
I think I stopped breathing for about 2 or 3 minutes. I didn't really, I was kind of, my first reaction was, this has got to be a fucking mistake, you know. It was unheard of, you know. It's something like that happens once every 10 years in prison to somebody.
Michael has no real idea why he was paroled. He thinks it might have had something to do with a lawsuit he filed against the prison system, saying that it was understaffed and unsafe. Releasing Michael made the lawsuit go away.
I think it was a surprise to both of us when he suddenly was put on the street. You know, he was scared at the thought of coming out. He wasn't prepared for it. Neither one of us was, really. You know, I wanted him home, and I knew it was going to be hard. I knew it was going to be difficult, and I knew that the chances of the relationship lasting were very bad. But, you know, I had agreed to try it, and so.
Do you think that you would have gotten into the relationship as you did, and to the degree that you did, if you knew that he was actually going to get out one day?
I can't answer that. I really don't know.
Now with Michael about to be released, the contract we talked about at the beginning of this story, the one that laid out all the shared household and relationship duties should Michael, a convicted murderer, ever get paroled, that contract was about to be put into effect. The contract stipulated a 2-year trial period for their marriage. If it turned into a real marriage, fine. If it didn't, they would go their separate ways. Joan could fire Michael, or he could quit, those are their words, at any time. Nobody keeps statistics on how long prison marriages last on the outside, but lots of prison people will tell you most end before a year is up. On August 21st, 2010, after 40 years in prison and 10 years with Joan, Michael was a free man. Joan was waiting for him in a parked car at the prison gates, wearing an earring Michael had made for her. Joan was so nervous and excited that she hadn't slept the night before. She had a whole romantic vision for the day. She made a reservation at a 5-star hotel. Michael walked out wearing his prison-issued jumpsuit, nervous and overwhelmed to be out.
And he didn't kiss me or anything. He just got into the car and said, let's go. So it was a very unromantic meeting, and it kind of hurt me.
You know, I was elated, but I was kind of bewildered, you know. I don't think you can describe it.
I thought he would be as warm to see me as he was in the visiting rooms where he'd hug me and, you know, try to steal an extra kiss or something. No, it was very businesslike. It wasn't what they show in the movies at all.
As comprehensive as the contract was, it didn't cover everything. It didn't occur to them to include anything about sex. A quick warning to anyone listening with kids, this next bit of story is about that. Michael had never had sex with someone he loved. And 40 years in prison.
I did not expect him to be so afraid to tell it. We have our clothes on and he hugs me all day long.
They went to sleep.